This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
I'm Katie. I'm a careers consultant with the University of London Careers Group, and we provide the careers support for SAS. So that's why I've been asked to come along today and do just a short talk on why postgraduate study, or why do postgraduate study. So I'm going to talk about the positives, obviously, but also about some of the negative things, or some of the things that you need to probably consider before opting to do further postgraduate study. I'm a careers consultant by trade, and I've got a Master's in Careers Development, so I've done some postgraduate study myself, so I kind of know what you guys are going through. But we've also got a panel here of people who have also done Master's programs, and someone who's currently doing a PhD here, and they're going to share their stories and experiences afterwards. So we'll do a short presentation now, probably about 10 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes there, if that's all right. Are you guys thinking about doing PhD study or Master's study? Masters? PhD? Okay, brilliant. Masters.
I'm already a master at once. Maybe have to.
Looking at going to PhD? Ah, fantastic. So we've got kind of a bit of a mix. What I've done is tried to make a fairly general presentation, but I'll pick out some examples to help you to get through and talk about the types of things that we're looking at. I guess it's always nice to start with the benefits of any sort of postgraduate study. And some of the practical things, I always look at the end result. And I think that when you're considering any sort of postgraduate study, I think it's very much worthwhile thinking about where am I heading and where am I going to go, and is this going to get me there? I work at UCL 2 days a week. I also work at St George's Medical School. And in the last few years, I've seen a lot more students, undergraduate students, coming through saying to me, the reason I'm going to do a Master's is because I can't seem to find a job anywhere else. And for me, that's a really wrong reason to do postgraduate study, mostly because I'm probably going to see those students a year later saying, I still can't find a job, you've done a Master's, and I'm this much more in debt. Okay? So when you're thinking about doing Master's or PhD program, PhD probably a lot more than Master's even, because it's a much bigger investment. It's about, okay, well, where am I going? What do I need to get here? Because these days there's so many different Master's courses out there, and they all sound a little bit the same, but they all get you to slightly different places, and they all cost a lot of money. So it's about saying, okay, well, actually, do I want to do this Master's? Is it going to get me to the job or the role that I want to do out the other side? Same with the PhD. Am I interested in going into academia? In which case, yes, I will need a PhD. Or am I interested in moving into industry? In which case, again, a PhD might be helpful, but I might not necessarily need it. So it's about almost looking at a little bit further ahead and then working backwards to figure out, firstly, do I need this? And secondly, what else do I need apart from this? So quite often, universities will offer you not just a Master's. They might say, we've got this Master's, and it's actually got industry involvement. So let me give you an example. For something like international development, it's almost expected that most people who are going to work in international development will have a Master's, at least, of some description. However, I know, having worked with a lot of international development people, that having a Master's isn't enough. So just a Master's isn't enough. You need experience in the field, usually, and you need contacts. So when you're looking at weighing up what Master's should I do, it's about what else can I get from this Master's? What other industries come in and will talk to me while I'm doing that Master's? Does the Career Service organise events where I'm going to be able to meet people? Same idea with the PhD. If you're looking at getting a lectureship or going into academia afterwards, quite often it's about who you know, especially with PhDs, because you need postdoc research experience usually, and you'll need to get funding. So you will need to know people who you can apply for funding with. So it's not just what am I going to do within this PhD, it's what else am I going to be able to get out of this PhD. Okay. I've got a little bit off track from my slides, I always tend to. That tends to be what happens. But I think that, you know, along the lines of these ideas around possible benefits, yes, you will get greater credibility. I know since I've had my Masters in Careers Development, I get a lot more work coming my way, which is fantastic, I love it, but it's also a lot more work because I've got this qualification. You're going to get a lot more experience, a lot more specialised experience. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, because some employers view that as great, others don't. Usually, especially with some of the SAS programs, you're going to get a lot more international exposure, which if you're interested in moving around the world, that's fantastic. And ultimately, it does allow you entrance into certain professions, so sometimes you will just need that postgraduate qualification. Just to give you an idea of some of the attitudes that are out there, the social research employer that I'm looking at, for reasons we can't actually name who it was, however, they find PhD graduates to be a lot more mature, and they can work a lot more by themselves. And if you think about what you're going to do within that PhD, you're going to learn a lot more project management skills. You're going to have to be very autonomous and self-motivated. And I think that's reflected here in the comment. The same with the business sector. It's about the questioning nature of a PhD. So they like the fact that you guys have got these different skills as you come out the other side. Especially quite often with humanities PhDs and master's courses to a certain level. Lots of people say to me, what can I do with this particular master's or this particular PhD? The way the UK job market is structured, actually a lot of time you can do whatever you want because you've got transferable skills, which is what the UK job market tends to focus on. Transferable skills and contacts, so who you know. Okay. Which means it's much less about what you've done in the past and much more about how you can see those skills fitting into this next job. And a little bit of luck, obviously, especially at the moment. Okay. So from past research, it's about 60 to 80% of roles are advertised without a particular qualification that you need. Okay. In terms of salaries, obviously, you've invested a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money, probably. How does this actually affect your salary? It's really variable. There are some recruiters that focus on PhD and master's qualification students, and you will need these qualifications, and they sometimes tend to pay a little bit more for that. However, with master's students in particular, quite often you're competing with undergraduate people. So quite often your graduate salary, or the salary that you'll be competing for initially, is going to be very similar to what someone with a BSc or a BA will be getting. Having said that, they did some longitudinal studies, and they've seen that people with master's degrees, in particular, tend to progress quicker. So yes, they might start out on the initial salary, because that's what the job is advertised with, especially in something like social research or some of the charities, where actually they advertise the role at that salary because that's all they've got in the budget. But what tends to happen is that people who come through with master's qualifications will then progress quicker because they've got a deeper knowledge, because usually they're a bit more mature, and they've got the ability to think around ideas and come up with suggestions. Okay. Similar for PhDs, if you're looking at a traditional graduate labour market job, It might be that you're competing with master's students as well, and you will again go in on a similar level, but again you'll progress. If you're looking at academia and research, obviously that's completely different because you have to have a PhD to go into these roles. Okay? Now, what are the things that you should be thinking about in terms of the minus side, I guess? There are some issues within the UK recruiting sector about the too much education side of things. Sometimes you do get too specific. So there's a lot of things around being overqualified and possibly underexperienced. So having that academic knowledge, but not actually having the experience of applying it. Lots of master's courses these days are looking at helping you change that by offering a placement service, and SAS has got access to placement services through the careers group. They're also looking at bringing in lots of practical employers within that. A lot of PhDs these days have got collaborations with either industry or with other universities, other research groups, to help get over this idea that you're overqualified but underexperienced. And it's expensive. It's expensive in both your time and the financial cost. So it's almost like doing a little cost benefit. Am I going to be able to do this? However, there are lots of funding options out there. And I think the lady before me spoke about funding, and the lady after me is going to speak about funding again in case you missed it. Okay. So there are lots of funding out there, especially for postgraduate study. Masters is a little less, but definitely for PhDs. So these were some of the other side of the research that we did on employer attitudes. Quite often, especially with PhD students, there's an idea that if you're looking at moving into industry, you may be a little bit institutionalised. However, this is fading. And now we get approached quite a bit by people who want to hire master's students. This was from a general recruitment firm, so they were saying that this was actually a master's, comment about a master's qualification. They were too specialised. I suspect that might have something to do with the way in which they presented themselves on paper, as opposed to actually being more specialised. It actually all depends. What it comes down to is it depends on the sector, depends on the roles that you're looking at, and it depends on your experience too. So I can see that some of you guys out there are going to be more mature students who've got a past life and a past group of experiences that you're going to bring to that particular role. Okay, so it's going to depend on where am I heading, how does this life fit into the next life, and what's this master's going to be. I speak from experience. I actually studied science in New Zealand a very long time ago. Now I do this, which has nothing to do with science, and it took me quite a while to transition through. And I chose to do my master's because it showed that I was committed to this particular role. I didn't need my master's to do this job. I just need a postgraduate certificate, but I went on to do the master's, and that's worked for me because it's meant I could progress a lot more. Okay. So in terms of how your past life fits into your future life, it really does depend on what we envisage that future life to be. Okay. It also depends a little bit on the course and the institution. So think about where am I going, especially if you're looking at PhDs. And when I say course, I actually mean supervisor. So I work a lot with PhD students at UCL. The main reason that they do not complete their PhDs is usually because they don't get along with their supervisor. Okay. It's nothing to do with the research they're doing. It's usually not to do with the subject. It's much more about their supervisor relationship. So my top tip for anyone looking at doing any sort of research is get to know your supervisor as well as you can, to think, can I handle 4 years of this person, okay? Are they going to be supportive? I think also when you read on websites, or when you look at a lot of the information that's out there, it's always very cherry-faced. And that's fair enough, it should be, it's marketing information. But just because it says that doesn't necessarily mean it. So ask lots of questions. And ask lots of questions of guys here today, lecturers, anyone who runs courses. What do your students go on to do? They will know this information. Who else comes in and will talk to me in the course? Again, they'll know that information. Most lecturers are actually practitioners in some way, shape or form. So have a chat to them and ask these guys here in the panel shortly what sort of roles they're thinking of going on to do or doing now. Okay? And make sure while you're at that university, you don't just study, you take the opportunity to get involved with all of the other things that are there, or as many that make sense for you. So do meet with your lecturers as often as you can. When you're looking for jobs out the other side, these guys are usually tapped into different types of networks. These are particularly for PhDs, students. Where do you want to go? Are you going to get there? If you're thinking about academic careers, you need to show on an academic CV that you've got your PhD, so the research experience you've got. You need to show that you've got some form of grant experience, so winning money in some way, shape or form. So if you can get involved in writing a bid or at least talking about a bid with your supervisor, that always looks good and you will get employed if you can win money. And the other third one is teaching. So possibly not as important at this stage, but longer term you will need to have teaching skills if you're looking to move into lectureship type roles. Okay? So that's what I meant by the golden three. So these are the types of questions you can start to ask your potential supervisors. Okay. In terms of the support we can give you, we are here to help. So we do lots of workshops within SAS, and there's lots of other services that you can access. We do one-to-one appointments, and we can help you with internships and postgraduate employment. There's lots of fairs and lots of different courses that you can sign up to in terms of career support. And I've just popped down here a couple of websites, and I'm quite happy to see the sites too if anyone's interested in them. But these slides can help you understand, these websites can help you understand what you might do out the other side. So Prospects is quite a good one for general kind of job roles, and it can give you, it's not particularly vacancies, it's much more about the role above that. Beyond the PhDs, particularly for humanities PhDs, and it's got lots of case studies on it, which is helpful. Postgrad.com's got this amazing range of things, and finally Careers Tagged is kind of like Google, but it's just got careers websites on it. So I'm happy to, I'll be around afterwards so I can give you some of those websites. I'll leave that up there as well. I'm now going to hand over to my amazing panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves really quickly, and then if you guys have any questions around study or the types of things you want to do, please feel free to yell out. Who wants to start? You're a kind of person.
I'll start. Thank you, that was really informative actually. My name is Hella Applevik-Lawson, and I studied a master's here last year in understanding and securing human rights. I'm in my late 20s, in case that means anything to anyone, and I did have a life before my master's in academic publishing. So as much as I've tried to remove myself from the world of academia, I always find myself sort of falling back into it. I should say, actually, I'm currently working here for the Human Rights Consortium, which is linked to the School of Advanced Study. It's a human rights sort of think tank and research project organisation. And I work with academics to hopefully realise their funding proposals and publish their work and put on events, academic events about human rights. So that's where I am now. If we rewind all the way back to my undergrad, I actually studied English literature. So on first sort of glance, not really much to do with human rights. But I I came to my interest in human rights through a sort of slow process of doing little bits of volunteering here and there. I ended up doing some writing work for charities like ActionAid, just as a sort of, just as a little thing to do while I was trying to work out what I really wanted to do. And my one skill was writing, or so I like to think. And then I ended up doing some work for Amnesty International, again voluntary. They don't tend to sort of throw money at you, these organisations. And someone there told me that this course, the SAS Understanding and Securing Human Rights course, was a good one to do. I was looking around at masters, and I even went back to my undergraduate tutor and said, so I want to study again for some crazy reason, and should I do a master's in English, or should I, maybe look into this sort of social justice, human rights, development sort of area? And so the long and the short of it, I asked lots of advice from lots of very clever people to try and work out what I should do and what the right idea was. And I went to meet with some tutors, even though it wasn't a PhD. I thought, I want to know who these people are and how they feel about their courses. And I ended up settling on this one. And I would say that I chose it because I'm not a lawyer. If anything, I'm a literary critic or a writer. So I came into this particular course because I saw that the law component wasn't a human rights law master's. It was about understanding and securing human rights. It was about sort of philosophy behind human rights and the practical implications of how you measure human rights and what the UN does and how NGOs work, and that was really attractive to me because I was thinking I can't throw myself into a human rights law master's without much of a background in law. So I guess following that system of I'm here and I want to be here, how do I get there? And I think it was a really good decision because I had a really great time. I met people from so many different backgrounds, including law, and learnt an awful lot of really, really practical skills. I mean, the academic side was there, but what I was most impressed with about the Masters was that, just as I'd hoped, there was a lot of practical, here's someone working in this field, here's someone who goes out to war zones, here's someone who does fundraising, here's someone who does economic justice, here's an activist. We met lots of people. We had great tutors who you could really, talk to, and they would always help you with contacts and email addresses if you wanted them. So yeah, I guess what I'm doing now, which is working directly with those tutors, is again I'm sort of slightly back in academia, and I think they were quite attracted to the academic publishing I've done in the past. But it's it's slightly closer to where I want to be, which is working in human rights research. So yeah, that's me. I'm not going to talk any further. I'm going to let these two tell you their stories. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't know. You can hear me okay? I feel like I'm away from those things. My name is Kara Smith, and I did the same.
Don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. I did the same MA that Hella did, actually. We've just finished, or not just, but 6 months ago, finished an MA in Human Rights here at the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. And like Hella, I am...
Sorry, would you mind using the mic?
Okay. Is that better? So like Hella, my undergrad was in history and politics, it wasn't in human rights, but I've always wanted, this is the kind of NGO sector is where I've always wanted to work. So I travelled and I was living in Japan for a while, but coming back to London, I decided to do this MA because it was, as Hella said, it's very practical. So I didn't have a legal background, so I wasn't going to do an LLM, and I didn't want to look at something that focused solely on the sort of philosophy of human rights. While there is that component to it, what it has is the opportunity to do internships, and one of the things that was really good for me was the opportunity to do a funding proposal, because I'm currently a fundraiser with Body and Soul, which is a HIV charity based in London. One of the nice things about this then is that because it's very, very close-knit kind of group with a really good student officer actually, because he sends out lots of opportunities for volunteering and lots of internships and job opportunities and all that things. You're really kept in the loop. Because I'm assuming you all want to kind of get into the international sector, international development kind of sector, NGO world, not so much. Well, yeah, that's, I suppose, doing our human rights, I mean, that's the area we wanted to go to.
But I think what you're saying is that you were able to access a lot of the sort of very practical support as well. And I think that that's something that goes through a lot of the SAS qualifications. There's a really good practical element, so you don't just do the academic, you do have an element of that. Where am I going to go? What sort of practicalities? And where's the experience as well as the academic resource?
I think as well, just to add to that, is SAS is dedicated postgraduate study. So there's a lot of places out there that have undergraduates to worry about as well. Yeah. Whereas our student officer, who's amazing, and and our tutors only had us to think about. And at master's level, that can be quite rare, I think.
It's very rare, and it's also rare at PhD level as well. So you've got someone who's solely focused on that idea around postgraduate, and the needs of postgraduate students, whether they're masters or PhD, is so different from undergraduate. Having worked with both, quite happy to say that.
And one of the things, especially about this being in London, because London, with the NGO industry, academics and media, it's kind of the centre of so many different industries. And one of the things that they really encourage here, and that I definitely benefited from, was getting out there, meeting as many people as possible, going to as many events as possible. I ended up volunteering for about half a year at Body and Soul. And then I was just lucky enough that at the end of my, just actually about a month before I was supposed to hand in my dissertation, this job came up, so I went for it. And I was lucky enough to get it. And I definitely, so it was a case of kind of right place, right time, but that's, you know, built on kind of going out and seeing as many people as possible and building contacts. And also having that MA was the reason I got the job. So especially in the kind of international development area, you need an MA. So you need to know the sector you want to get into and if it's necessary for your particular area, but for ours it definitely is.
But I think you raised a really good point there in terms of choosing a subject or choosing a dissertation subject, especially for master's students, but as well as for PhDs. When you're looking at how do I construct my PhD, thinking about where you're going, and if you can get into your research project people that you can meet people already that are doing that, because most businesses and organisations are really open to people coming in and doing some form of study with them. There's a lot of push to get collaborative in the wider world these days. And if you can take your dissertation and use it to say, yes, I want to get in here, then quite often you do end up with contacts and possibly win a job at the end of it, which is pretty brilliant.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's me done.
Yeah, sorry, we're kind of running out of time, but would you?
Hi, my name is Wyle, and I did my LLM last year in the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies in International Corporate Governance, Financial Regulations, and Economic Law. Currently, I'm pursuing my PhD, also in the same field, in foreign direct investment. One of the reasons that drove me to choose this LLM was my passion for foreign investment. I wanted to learn more about foreign investment, about international investment, international trade, banking, financial regulations. All of those were part of what drove me to choose this LLM. After that, my undergraduate degree was in law. The second one was in international business, so it was just a logical process for me to continue in that field. What I would recommend is that whenever you have a chance to do an internship, just go for it. Do an internship. It would give you good experience. I know now the companies that I've worked for during the past years and back home in Lebanon or in Saudi Arabia or in Oman, all of those companies are waiting for me until I finish my education, and they want me to go back, but I'm still delaying this because I want to improve more on my education. So if you do improve yourself more, you're going to gain more, you're going to learn more. It's just like a bank for you. It just enrich your knowledge. And yeah, this is basically it from my side.
Thanks a lot, guys. Sure. We're out of time, but there is but it doesn't look like we're getting booted out of the room, which is fantastic. So what I will say is that maybe it might be better because there's just a small number of people. If we go down and if you guys have got any questions that you want to ask just one of us, please feel free to come up. Also, if you want the copy of my PowerPoint slides, I can send them. Actually, I'm guessing you guys had to register with your email address, so I can send them to the organisers and get them to send them out to you because I've got the links on them. Thank you very much.